Ladies and gentlemen, hello there. My name is Dragonaut, and today I want to talk to you about something that's been bothering me for a bit of a while now, and honestly, originally I was pretty scared of making this video because it ultimately, whether I want to admit it or not, what it does is it kind of attacks a lot of YouTubers and a lot of people in general. Now, I'm obviously 25 seconds in, I'm starting off on the absolute best foot, right? Saying that I'm going to insult people. No, that's not my intention, or that's not what I'm going to do at all, but what I mean is rather it criticizes something that I've noticed across the political spectrum, across media, and just everywhere, really. And that's that people read into things and consume certain media too literally. And there's serious problems with that. Some of which are obvious, some of which are not. Now, a lot of this, what I'm saying right now, is kind of more or less prompted by Hogwarts Legacy, and I know that even mentioning the name of the forbidden game is going to land me in trouble, and I understand. Look, I understand that you don't want to support an author of something that you don't politically, morally, ethically agree with. And that's fine. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. If you don't want to support local charity for, a cat shelter because you don't like cats, that's also fine. If you don't want to support, let me pick a more extreme example on the other side, like, well, I have such books here, but some of them are too, a bit too extreme. Lovecraft, let's say. Well, actually, that's pretty extreme too, but I have worse. Let's say you don't want to support Lovecraft, and you're not going to read his stuff. Well, the man's dead, so you're not exactly supporting him, so, go ahead and buy all the Lovecraft books you want, but let's say someone like that. It's really useful using a person from history, rather than a live one, because it's, it gives you a sort of sense of objectivity. Let's say if such a person, such an author was alive now, well, you wouldn't want to buy his books and give him money because you disagree with his, well, in the case of Lovecraft, openly and almost proudly racist behavior. And you know what? That's entirely fine, normal. But here's where's the problem is. So this is a video entirely about literature and not about, well, mostly about literature and a little bit about culture, right? You can't, though on a philosophical level, the two are identical. There is no such thing as literature without culture, but what I mean is I'm not discussing broader problems of society and cancel culture and, stuff like that. Rather, I'm talking specifically about literature, which is, and has been, my professional domain for the last 8 years or so. 10, actually, I think. Yeah, for the last 10 years or so. I'm a PhD student for literature, so, I'm on my own field, or in my own field, on my own. I have home turf advantage, is what I'm trying to say, right? So here's my point. People then take this and apply it, this sort of negative attitude towards the author and the fact that they don't want to support the author, and apply it to the author's work. Again, I love Lovecraft as an example for this. I just gazed over. I have a shelf of controversial books in my room. It is what it is, right? Of books that are banned in certain parts of the world and censored media and stuff like that, and I absolutely love it. So, among others, collected works of Lovecraft is up there, and I absolutely love this example. Lovecraft's writing is phenomenal. Is it perfect and ideal? What is perfect and ideal, right? But Lovecraft's writing, his world building, his sense for tension, for language, for symbolism, for dark, creepy, eerie aesthetics, for psychology and messing with people's heads, is brilliant. Here's the problem. There are obvious racist remarks in his works, and yes, you could easily say, well, that's because the author is racist. And he is. Lovecraft is not a very nice person, if you didn't know that. No doubt about it. But here's the thing. His personality does not necessarily detrimentally affect his work. In that, if someone is a bad person, that doesn't mean that what he created and what he wrote is terrible literature. In Lovecraft's example, like I said, it's the opposite. It doesn't matter that there are, it doesn't matter in the sense of quality of the writing that there are certain racist remarks there, that the name of the cat, whose name I dare not say on YouTube, but, you can Google it, the name of Lovecraft's cat, which does appear in his stories, is, pretty ridiculous and as blatant as it gets. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the character who owns the cat in the story is racist. That's what you get out of it. Okay. The character's not supposed to be the hero, often they're the victim. And again, I'm just using this as an example. The same thing applies to the game Hogwarts Legacy, which, it's a great game, don't get me wrong. Reviews on Steam are fantastic, haven't played it. But will I at some point? I don't know, I'm pretty busy, I have PhDs to write. I'm kidding, I'm not actually that busy, but I'll see, maybe. I'll see how this entire situation works out, and the whole thing. But here's the thing, it doesn't mean that now, because you know this information about the author, you need to find elements of racism everywhere in the book. Like, Cthulhu is described as black, and that's because H.P. Lovecraft is racist. Well, no, it's described as black because naturally we have a fear of the dark. That's how we're raised up. That's part of culture. We are afraid of the unknown. It's part of evolution as well. The tiger could jump out of the woods when it's dark because I can't bloody see it, and when it's day I can sort of identify the threat. It's within our nature. It has nothing to do with... Well, actually, it has very little to do with culture in general, but it has nothing to do with this particular aspect of Lovecraft. And... oh boy. A little bit afraid of that, okay. So that's the thing, right? Now... I'm sorry, I'm very terrified of this pulsar. I hate these things. Am I safe? Fly away from it, hopefully. Okay, good, we're out. Game in the background, by the way, is Elite Dangerous. And I think people do this often, and they read too literally into things. So they will find one thing, and then they will try and apply it everywhere. Like, I've seen I said at the beginning, I'm terrified to mention this, and the reason I'm terrified to mention this is I've seen a YouTube video with about, I don't know, several million views discussing topics of this nature and doing this exact same thing, and there's 4 million people that disagree with me and think that the video is awesome, and I'm just looking at it going, yeah, okay, look, some of these points are good, but some of this is so far stretched that you just... No, that's not how literary analysis works. You can't really back that up. That's just making assumptions, and that isn't in the text, right? That it's not there for you to know. It's just, am I right? Just no. Okay, period. I'm kidding, but at the same time, it's kind of a big deal. And yeah, this goes for Harry Potter, this goes for anything out there, right? And any author that you don't like, and anything that's moderately controversial nowadays. Maybe Jordan Peterson is a good example, right? He writes a book, and from what I understand, it's a successful book. I haven't read it, but then people would read into it very, very ridiculously, and just searching for proof of their ideas within a text that doesn't contain that and try and shoehorn it in. Now, this has nothing to do with, again, the author. You can think about him whatever you want. This has nothing to do with the quality of the work he produced. This is just making stuff up. It's fugazi, it's air, right? It's nothing. It's not there. It's inventing it. That, I feel like, is a big issue that people tend to do nowadays, and again, I go back to Lovecraft, and if you were to start looking for autobiographical elements of his life into a story and then pointing out that as a bad thing, a problematic thing or whatever, no. It's not necessarily problematic at all. I mean, again, the fact that one of his characters is racist doesn't have anything to do with it being a bad piece of writing. And you don't have to have characters that are all good, by the way. I mean, I know this is probably obvious to some, but I feel like I might have to mention this, right? Because what I mean is that if he's a racist character, that's fine, you accept that. You don't like the character, you don't identify with the character, but you accept that people like that exist. And he's in the story now. So what? That's not necessarily... There's nothing wrong with having evil characters, having morally ambiguous characters, having morally deprived and just dreadful characters in general as persona in the thing. It's also fine. But then I go over to Hogwarts and the whole situation, and I really didn't want to talk about this, but like I said, mostly because I'm terrified too, because I feel like I'm going to get lynched by a mob for disagreeing with a video that has, well, actually several videos that have millions of views on the topic, but you study literature for 10 years and you learn certain things, and then you see people doing the opposite of what you've learned and making mistakes, and you feel compelled to go, there's a problem with this. You make good points, but there's a problem with this here. And honestly, that professional side of me is now taking over. I'm going to have to address it anyway, mostly because this is a very small channel and I'm not exactly terrified of this being sort of blown out of proportion, let's say. Not that terrified, anyway. People will find certain plot points or elements in Harry Potter and go, oh, this is because the author is terrible, and this is a terrible element of the story. This character is evil, and for God's sakes, I've read an article or a blog post or something that says Hagrid is the equivalent of Hitler. Here's the problem. Here's my... Getting back to the original topic and then the title of the video. They will then read too literally into something. They will take a joke, a comedic relief moment, and try and shoehorn and force deeper meaning and more political meaning into this for hours on end. Like the cat, right? Like the cat in
telemetry obtained.
Jesus Christ, in oh, my brain has actually stopped.
This is your first visit to this system.
Cthulhu. Not Cthulhu's hat, but the writer. Right? I realize I've said his name about 50 times, but
Commander.
I have a lot on my mind right now. Sorry about that. Anyways. Let me just grab a drink of water and I'll continue this train of thought. Lovecraft, yes. Focus, Juggernaut, focus. Sorry about that. Just completely brain froze. I wanted to say Hawthorne, and just that was the only word stuck in my head. Sorry about that. Anyways, going back to it. This was done in the past as well. I mean, this was done with, I think, Ken Kesey suffered a lot of criticism of this type. I know Julian Barnes had some problems as well with being censored and stuff. I mean, there's plenty of authors that were censored, but this particular style of almost deliberate misinterpretation and sort of shoving down some meaning into a text where it realistically doesn't belong. There's more examples. I'll think of them as I go along the way. I'm now going through lists of authors, but the sort of biggest issue at hand here for me is that people then start to read into things too literally, and this is where you get into sort of a problem and a trap. Like, and I'll have to pick out like specific things. I'll try and not mention people and video and specific videos. I'll try and mention some, like, mostly stick to some anonymous quotes and tweets and TikToks and other nonsense, which I at least hope most of us can agree rather is nonsense. But there was one that said, well, Avada Kedavra is so close to Abracadabra that a child, having read the books, will now have been traumatized by the fact that, you know, the child might think that he nearly killed someone, and thus the author promotes, you know, child abuse. What the fuck? I mean, I'm sorry for swearing, but what the actual hell? And once again, the most terrifying thing to me is, I don't see many people disagreeing with this. Part of the reason is, yes, because the whole issue has become, like everything else in our society, ridiculously polarized. You're either one end of the aisle or the other, and there's no in-between, and there's no questioning your aisle or, you know, finding good stuff in the opposite one. It's unnatural, it's idiotic, etc., etc., but there's... I mean, I cannot think of a better example for what I'm trying to say, and there's a lot of it. And it's not exclusive to just the most controversial hot take moments like Hogwarts Legacy and the whole drama that it's stirring up. You know, you can find that in a lot of places. You can find that often with philosophy and books like that. For example, Nietzsche is often criticized as being a nihilist. There is nothing further from the truth. He's about as un-nihilistic an author as you can find, but he was misinterpreted as being a nihilist, which I kind of understand given his writing and some of the things you might pick up from that. I mean, someone tells you that God is dead and life is meaningless, you're not gonna really consider him an optimist, but, you know, that's just picking out one little thing and not really applying any real understanding to the problem. That, I feel like, is happening here as well. We have a situation where what is effectively just a joke is being upplayed and dramatized, and just... There's some sort of incredibly large sense of significance being attributed to it that I really don't know what to say. I mean, it's just not there. Now, there are plenty of controversial and problematic plot points and aspects to consider in, well, Hogwarts, the world in general, regardless of who made the video game or wrote the books, right? The position of goblins and elves in it is, you know, leaves some questions to be answered, undoubtedly. I agree with that, right? A race that is in love with their position as servants and slaves. Yeah, okay, that's a topic to talk about and open up and discuss. But discuss. Open up seriously. Sit down and think about it a little bit. You know, not just make snappy TikTok reactions and videos where you just, you know, hurl insults at the author. No, let's actually sit down and think about this. Yeah? Is this just the author? Is this a societal problem? Is this a cultural, wider cultural problem? Is this a problem? Why? How? Well, is there anything similar in, you know, other fantasy works? Etc., etc. Okay, you know, if we have a serious conversation about this, yes, there are things we can find like that. Goblins again, you know, racial stereotypes and everything. Okay, but at the same time, this is children's literature. And you gotta understand that this was written some time ago. This wasn't written yesterday. Stereotypes are part and parcel of most fairy tales as well. The fox is always cunning, the wolf is always hungry, the elves are always... well, actually, no, they're not. Aha! There we go, right? So now we're now having a productive conversation about something. We've now realized that, okay, if sheep are like this, and wolves are like that, and wizards are always like this, and there's certain stereotypes within the fantasy genre, the elves now aren't a part of that stereotype. They're very different, and honestly, kind of concerning a little bit is their entire dynamic in the world. Now we're having a conversation about this. A critical... at least I hope somewhat well-articulated conversation on the topic. It's hurling insults and just trying to find connecting random dots until you form a picture that you like doesn't achieve this, and calling Hagrid Hitler certainly doesn't achieve this either. Yeah, there was, and this is as close to quoting a video as I will ever get in this rant of mine, I promise you. There is a certain video that says he disfigures an innocent child. What you also have to understand is that Freddy Krueger disfigures people and dismembers people. From that wording, you get the impression that Hagrid disfigures people much in the way that Freddy Krueger does. He doesn't. It's a joke. It's a childish joke for a childish narrative, or a narrative that mainly appeals to children. Mainly, not exclusively, because now someone's going to find that, oh, well, it deals with the topic of death, so clearly that's not for children. Yes, the target group does not mean exclusive group that needs to read this, right? The two are not the same. I mean, Jesus Christ, take a look at any animated movie made in the last 10 years. Plenty of lewd jokes to find in there. Just that 5-year-old children won't understand them, but the parents that are going to the cinema with them will, and they're going to go, heh, yeah, I've had a good time, right? I mean, not really my thing, but yeah, picked up on some of the dialogue, kind of funny. You can do both. You can do both, there's no problem with that. You can absolutely do both. So what I'm saying here is, people, and when criticizing this, and when trying to, when bringing up some valid points, also tend to sort of veer off track and go into this ridiculousness of just ascribing meanings and not understanding basic context or basic broader views, or having, I guess, slightly broader viewpoints, I suppose I can call them. And what I mean by that is the point of the scene where you know, Hagrid, quote-unquote, disfigures an innocent child is, one, that child isn't very innocent. He's been clearly implicitly bullying the main character. And, oh, but we only see him do it once, and then, yes, but this isn't a one-to-one reconstruction of the world. There are certain things that are implied. And the implication is this isn't the first time that it happened, and the implication is, in between some of the books and the scenes, there's also things going on. You don't see every single second of every single day of every single character's point of view. Leave some to your imagination, fill in the gaps a little bit, right? And you're going to fill them up differently from what I will, but that's fine. That's also the beauty of literature and narratives in general, and stories, which is what humans have been telling each other for eons now, and yes, I exaggerate on purpose, but, you know, that's... It seems kind of ridiculous that I have to explain this, that not everything in literature, and in fantasy especially, is supposed to be taken literally and at face value and applied to the moral situation of the world that you live in. Simply because a character on the screen has grown a pig's nose and a pig's tail and is described as obese, does not mean that the author has those comments about people in her environment in this world. It's a joke. And I guarantee to you, the moment that the first Harry Potter movie came out, years and years ago, I don't actually remember what year it was, 2000 something, right? Every single solitary child that has seen that scene of the bully getting bullied back and, you know, having a taste of his own medicine went, ha-ha. As well as they should have, because that's the point. Ah, well, Juggernaut, but that encourages what? Me to get a wand and turn people into pigs? Okay, really? In a world, and again, it goes, like I said, I'm just picking this as an example because it's the hottest thing and the latest thing, and I'm trying to stay relevant. I'm kidding. I'm picking this thing because it's an obvious example that I think most people will be able to follow along without having to go outside of the video and look up what I mean. But you get this in you can find this in Lovecraft as well. It's like, oh well, because of you know, Cthulhu being black and all the bad things happening at night means that the character's racist, or the character, or the author's racist, and it's all actually just comments on race. It's not just about building a creepy story of horror and eldritch monstrosities and stuff. No, it's actually just about him trying to push a narrative of racism and imperialism and colonialism and whatever. You ever consider that maybe he's just trying to make a creepy story and that some of these elements that you're listing are just there for different reasons? That not everything that you read, not every single solitary word and comma that you read is about your political point of view and the political narrative and story that you're trying to spin. You might want to consider that. You might want to take that into consideration. Again, not to say that there aren't valid points to be made about... well, hell, there was one about indoctrination, right? About the superiority or inferiority of the magical and non-magical world and the sort of cultural, socio-political dynamic of the two, you know. Is a muggle a term that you know, is an insult, and if that, then... well, hold on, how is that acceptable, but, what do they call the ones that are mixed? I forget the word. How is some other term as a sort of insult not accepted? You know, where do we exactly draw the line? Why is that line there, and does that... yeah, there are issues like that are perfectly valid, but then there's also the fact that someone opens up a book and starts reading it, and I swear to God they just turn off their mind and just apply every single letter they see to the wall in front of them and go, aha! You've made a joke about someone being fat, ergo you are fat-phobic, ergo you hate people, women, I don't know, everything that exists, that's what you hate. It's just... context, era, target audience, magical world with magical broomsticks, and spells to fix everything. Huh? How about that? Reparo. Repair everything. Wow, yes, I know it doesn't work like that, but think about that as well. Right? And then, also another thing I found, is they will take characters' words and portray them as the words of the author. I really hope I don't need to tell you how horrible that is, and how wrong that is. Because there is a character, I think, that again, it goes back to the comments about slavery. He makes a comment that the elves are happy with their positions as slaves, and that giving them slavery is cruel. Subconscious, like, that's what my conscious wants to say, but yeah, that's what my subconscious wants to say. Rather, giving them freedom is cruel because they wouldn't know what to do with it, and you're like, oh, okay, hold on, yeah, that's a bit, really? You know, that's... You could say the same thing about literal animals, and then even then it would be controversial. So, are these elves worse? We haven't seen that. We've seen them talk, communicate. Okay, now that there's, we can have that discussion. That's problematic. That's, we can work on that. But here's the thing. That's what a character said. At what point in the book do you recognize the author in there? It's not to say that it doesn't have to happen. I mean, there's characters that have, say racial slurs in Lovecraft, and you would say, well, that doesn't mean that Lovecraft is racist. Yeah, but he was, and you'd probably agree with them, fine. But he didn't say them, his characters did. And you didn't say them when you read it. It's the character, and there's nothing wrong with the character being an arsehole. Or worse. For crying out loud, you can write a fantasy book, about some of the world's biggest villains, and they can say the most horrendous stuff. So, it's literature, it's fantasy. The point of the whole bloody thing is that you get to say outrageous stuff, and you get to put this on paper, and you get to interact with that world, and you get to present certain things that aren't you, right? How about something like that? You know, I really feel like stuff like this is obvious, and I don't have to say it out loud, but at the same time, based on the stuff that I've seen, same time, I feel like I have to. Anyways, tell me what you think about this, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to make the video way too long. I'm doing one of those Palladium runs for Oren Miller right now. It's, depending on when you want to upload this video, it's a current ongoing community event where you can sell it over here at this station for ridiculous profit in this game. And sorry if the gameplay wasn't the most exciting ever, but that's what I've been doing pretty much for the last few days, and racking up some pretty significant dough in the process. So, yeah. That's it for me. I don't want to make this video too long. I feel like I've gotten most of my points across. A lot of stuff I haven't talked about, but generally I think the problem is people tend to read into stuff literally and you know, ascribe meaning that isn't there, which I've mentioned a couple of times, so I don't want to repeat myself, but and also just in other ways, just read things literally without understanding that it's a metaphor, it's a joke, it's not meant to be taken seriously, or if it is, it's meant to be taken seriously within the world and not just applied to the 21st century and Europe and the United States, right, and the Western world. It's not for here, it's for the fantasy world, and whilst there's certainly plenty of arguments and criticism that we can take about certain positions of characters, certain decisions, and certain stereotypes within the world, and you can connect them to the to real life, and you can have those conversations, certain things can be problematic, absolutely. There is also a risk of overdoing it and finding things that just aren't there, basically. Yeah? Far be it for me to say that it's a wrong interpretation of things. I don't believe there can be such a thing, but I don't think that's much of an interpretation is my problem. I think it's just, you're not really interacting with the text, you're not really reading, you're not in the world, you're not immersed into this world, you're trying to produce rather than consume and explore a narrative and read a narrative. You're trying to produce a new one without having actually read the original to begin with. You're sort of, it's kind of like trying to understand the text and trying to I'm struggling with words again, give me a second, I'm sorry. Interpret the text without having actually read it. You know, that's okay, that's probably the most concise way I can think about it. Sorry again for the jump cut, but I haven't scripted any of this, I just felt really emotional about it, because like I said, you spend years and years, you know, a full decade of your life researching stuff like this, because it is a fascinating topic. To me, at least, it is really, because it covers so many different things. You know, all of a sudden, you start talking about one author in literature, and it takes you everywhere. It takes you to philosophy, to economy. It takes you to, you know, all walks of life, and you realize that that's what literature is. You know, and that's its power, and that's its responsibility, and there's strength in that, but there's also problems there, because, you know, if literary text really does take you everywhere, then, you know, maybe the position of elves, or the position of the names of cats in certain works matters quite a lot, and yeah, it does. You know, it definitely does, but at the same time, sometimes it's just a little Easter egg or a detail, like a name, that doesn't really have a deeper meaning other than, yeah, the author's a bit of an arse. Or worse, the author's, you know, despicable human being. So, you know, the author can be as despicable as he or she wants. Or they want, let's say. That's not the point. We're not judging the value with the moral value of the author in a narrative in a book. So yeah. Anyways, that's about it for me. Thank you very much for watching. Tell me what you think. I really think that I've made good points, and that yeah. I mean, like I said, I was terrified of talking about this because there's literally millions of people out there that I've kind of criticized, right? And sort of their understanding of what they've been doing. And I don't mean this maliciously, I mean this for the benefit of all humanity, right? I say that in jest, but what I mean is I'm saying this as out of a good place in my heart. I don't mean this as an insult to anyone. I mean this as a sort of my take on exploring this issue a little bit more seriously and trying to look at things, perhaps, you know, given my education and my job and my position, from a little bit more of a professional standpoint. And yeah, I dare say that, because like I said, 10 years of doing this. Yes, maybe add a little bit of professionalism to the conversation, but also try and point out what is valid and where some of the problematic interpretations and points and arguments are in such discussions, at least according to my experience and my knowledge and education and yada yada yada. That is to say, if you do disagree with something and think that a point that I've made is that I've underrepresented or I haven't considered something, please tell me down in the comments below, or, you know, if you don't feel like writing the entire paragraph and tell me why I'm wrong, just tell me to maybe reconsider it a little bit more. Just try and keep it civil, and we really don't have to insult each other and attack each other over this, because ultimately we're discussing fantasy literature, and this should be a friendly and warm environment, regardless of what we think about the authors. You know, we can discuss the most vile human beings out there as authors, and we can look at their text and say that, yeah, this is separate from the author. The moment he finishes writing it, it goes away from him. You know, I think Warren and Velek or Welek, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Actually, I've never pronounced it in English. Wow, okay. Wrote a book about this, that as soon as an author is done writing, that's it. It's gone. It's not his anymore. It belongs to the audience, to the reader, and they are to do with it, as long as it's, you know, just the text that they're interacting with, they are to do with it what they please. That said, as long as it's based on the text, and, you know, this idea of theirs is often misunderstood, and people only look at the first half of it. Oh, you can do whatever you want with the text. You can interpret it in any way you want. Yes, as long as it's based on the text, as long as you can argue and you can point to me why you think that is so. You know, as long as you have proof of that, as long as you can articulate and support your arguments with elements of the text, then yes. By the way, the text doesn't refer to an actual literal piece of paper that you read. It could be the, you know, scenes from a movie as well. That's considered text as well. It's a bit of a broader term in this context. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Like, subscribe now if you enjoyed the video. Or if you haven't, just, you know, tell me. Tell me why. Tell me I'm wrong. I really do love talking about this. And yeah, that's about it. Have fun. Take care. Those things are the kind of most important, right? I wish you all the very best, and I'll see you in another video. Hopefully something a little bit more fun, relaxing, and cheerful than a topic like this. Bye-bye.